Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Woodland Classroom. Today, we're going to be talking about the brain. Specifically, the anatomy of the brain is what we're going to be focusing on in today's class. So, anatomy of the brain. Hopefully, everyone brought their brain with them. Did you bring your... Hopefully, everyone has a brain. If you don't have a brain, you might not even... you shouldn't even be listening to this. Really, it's not going to help you. You have to have a brain. So hopefully you brought your brain with you while you're watching this. I'm just trusting that you have it. All right. So main part of the brain itself is really in three different areas. We have three major portions of the brain proper. Okay, the first part is this big, huge area up here. This is called the cerebrum. And the cerebrum, it is that part that really separates us from a lot of the rest of creation. Okay, God created us both body and spirit, different from the animals and the plants and everything else. We're created in His image, and so if we look at things on a spiritual point of view, we are completely separate from the physical world, but we have physical bodies, and we have our anatomy is very similar to the mammals and other animals, but specifically the mammals, that's what we are. And so we also have, in a sense, 1 foot in the physical world and 1 foot in the spiritual world, and we are the only part of God's creation that can do that. But as far as our physical bodies go, this part of the brain is really what sets us apart from just about everything else. We're not really that fast. We don't have big claws, we don't have big teeth, and all that kind of stuff. But we do have a really big brain, and that's really important. So this is the cerebrum. It is here that we have all of our higher functions, our ability to do art and math and music, our ability to think and reason, our ability to dream, our ability, the processing of all the information coming in from our 5 senses, the commands that go out to tell our body how to respond to what's coming in from our body from those 5 senses. All of that stuff is all going on here. Short-term memory, long-term memories, emotions, it's all there. It's everything, okay? It has everything there that really makes us different from the rest of creation. Okay, this bottom part down here, this part that's kind of hanging underneath, that is called the cerebellum. The cerebellum, I think of it like a bell. It's kind of hanging underneath. It's got the little knobby thing like a bell. Okay, that is the part that we actually can train. I call that the muscle memory portion of the brain. When you first started to write, for instance, way back when, elementary school, 1st grade, 2nd grade, when you first began to write, you probably had to think about every letter. How is the letter L different from the letter K? And you had to think about where to draw the line and where to not draw the line to make all the letters a different shape to do it correctly. You were using your cerebrum at that point to write, but now you're in high school and writing just flows. You think of a word, you don't have to think about, you might have to think about the letter sequence, but oftentimes you just write the word. You think of the word and you can write the word. Why? Because you have trained through muscle memory, you have trained that part of your brain to command the fine motor skills of your forearm and fingers to twitch that pencil in just the right way with just the right pressure to leave that mark on the paper. And that's, you've trained it to do that. Your volleyball serve, your baton handoff in a track relay, your free throw, your golf swing, the ability to drive. The more experienced drivers have this. We've trained ourselves physically how to do things without having to think about it. When you first start to learn a manual transmission car, you are using this, and the car jerks and lumps and it stalls, and you got to start it again, and people behind you are honking. They're so impatient. Oh my gosh. Anyway, so all that's going on, but as soon as a few weeks, a few months, a few years, and all of a sudden you're driving that manual transmission down here, and it is smooth as silk. No one even knows you have a manual transmission. It's so smooth. It's fantastic. So that's this part of the brain. That's the cerebellum. And then we come down to this lower part of the brain. I'm just going to call it the brainstem. But there's multiple parts to this. There's the midbrain, there's the pons, there's the medulla oblongata. All of that stuff exists here. This is the part of the brain that is really taking care of everything that you need to stay alive. Your heart beating, your blood pressure. It's kind of monitoring all of that stuff, making sure that nothing inside of you goes out of whack. I mean, wouldn't it be horrible if you had to consciously think about your heart beating and your breathing? Because normally this takes care of your heart beating and your breathing for you. You don't have to think about it. But if you had to think about it, oh gosh, you'd be like, your whole day would be like beat, 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 breathe, beat, 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 beat. And as soon as someone called your name, hey Greg, what? You would die. It'd be horrible. I mean, it'd be horrible. So this takes care of all the things that we don't want to have to think about every single moment of every single day just to stay alive. This is handling it. I mean, do you have to think about, when we talked about digestion, we talked about that cheeseburger moving through your alimentary canal. Do you want to really seriously, after you eat, sit down and have to think about pushing that food through your intestine for the next 8 hours? Yeah, I don't think so. Me either. This is handling all of that, and that is the brainstem. So these are the three major parts of the brain. Cerebrum, higher brain functions. Cerebellum, the part where muscle memory exists. And the brainstem that handles all of the unconscious things that keep us alive. The three major parts of the brain. We're now going to focus just up here on the cerebrum. So I'm going to get rid of these two. We're going to focus up here on the cerebrum, right? The cerebrum actually has 4 sections to it, 4 major lobes, if you will. We have the frontal lobe up here in the front. It's easy to remember. It's this part right here. All right, that's your frontal lobe. All right. We have the parietal lobe right here, kind of in the middle top. So it's right here. That's your parietal lobe. We have the occipital lobe back here in the back. That would be this part back here. And we have the temporal lobe. That's the part right here, kind of on the sides. So frontal, parietal, occipital, and temporal, right? Now those lobes are divided up into a couple of distinct, about 10 distinct regions that control different things. Well, first of all, you would be looking at the left side of the brain, like this. Whoa. There's my brain right there. That's my, okay. So that's the left side of the brain. You also have a right side of the brain. Interestingly enough, even though there's a lot of communication between the two, what are called hemispheres, the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere, even though there's a lot of communication between them, they do tend to have specific roles, specific functions in the brain. The left side tends to be more analytical and logical, where the right side tends to be more creative and expressive. It tends to be those two things. Doesn't have to be that way. There's a lot of communication that goes through. As a matter of fact, the more you can get your hemispheres to merge and let them cross over and think on opposite sides and let each side work together, the better it is. Okay? So, but it's interesting because those two hemispheres actually control opposite sides of the body. So the control for my right hand actually has its origins in the left side of my brain, and the control from my right side of the brain actually is what's controlling my left hand. So there's actually opposite. So it is true that left-handed people are the only people in their right mind. That was a little for all you lefties out there. I'm a righty. I'm not in my, okay, never mind. All right, so back to what's important. We're going to talk about there's about 10 major regions that this cerebrum is divided into, right? We're just going to start right here in the very front, and we're going to work our way kind of around, right? So the very front of the brain, I'll start it right here and kind of come down, let's come down like about like this, and we'll kind of go like that. I'll kind of make that part. We're going to call this part number 1, right? Number 1, this is the part of the brain that is dealing with what we simply will call higher mental functions. Higher mental functions. Higher mental functions. These would be things like being able to concentrate, concentration, being able to focus on something, planning, your inhibitions, the think you're like, I don't know if I should do that. Okay, all that's going on in this part. Your ability to judge things, your creativity, all of that is happening up here in this first part of the brain where this higher mental functions occur. That's where it's going on. It's way up here in the front. Okay, the second part is, let's see, I'm going to draw it in kind of like that. We're going to call that the second part right there. And this part right here has to do, this is a motor function area. Specifically, that motor function area is having to do with eye movements, with your orientation. It kind of helps you to stay oriented properly in space, to know up from down, right from left, and it helps to deal with the motor functions of your eyes. You know, when you focus on something in the distance, your eyes actually will pull outward like that to focus on something distant. And when you focus on something up close, your eyes will focus in like this. And as they move out and in, your brain here is registering where those movements are and enables you to judge distances fairly accurately. So that is that part of your brain, that motor function part of your brain. All right, I'm going to jump way back here to the back. I'm going to kind of come in this area right here. Let's go like that. Okay, actually a little bit too big. Let's go like that. How about that? That look okay? It looks okay to me, right? This is the third area. I'm kind of jumping to the back because we just talked about the motor function specifically for vision, for sight, for your eyes. Let's go ahead and jump back to the back and realize that way back here in that back area, in the occipital lobe, that is where your vision sits. So this is where vision is. Okay, you actually see with the back of your brain, your eyes actually are taking pictures and they're sending signals through the optic nerves, and when they get to the middle of the brain, they actually cross. So your right eye sends most of its signals to the left side of the brain, the left eye to the right side of the brain, but there's a fair amount of sharing that goes on between the two. But it is in the back part of your brain that you're actually able to resolve images and focus and see things. And that's all going on way back there in the back part of your brain. So that's where vision is. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and divide up these next two sections. Let's see here. Yeah, I'll come in like that and like that. We'll call this one 4 and this one 5. Those two sections right there. 4 has to do, it is your sensory area, okay? Sensory area. And 5 is your motor area. It is in number 4, that section right there, right along that parietal lobe, it is in number 4 that we actually are gathering in all the information coming in from our